welcome back. Thank you for joining me for another video. Today's video is for the Scrap and Stamp Canada blog post. I will leave the link down below for that, and that's where you can find all the materials I'm using today. I'm going to be making an interactive picture changer card here, one from the Lawn Fawn die cut series. I really enjoy this die cut. It's really simple to use. And I'm going to start out by tracing these squares onto the inside of the squares, onto some 110-pound classic crest cardstock here. And what I'm trying to do is stamp the exact same image into each of these little squares here. And I draw the squares out so that I know where to place all the elements that I'm stamping out. I'll be stamping those with the Memento Black Tuxedo ink, as I'll be doing some Copic coloring. So I do have some mistakes along the way here, and one of them is I didn't pre-plan this out to figure out my masking, and what I should have done is actually stamped some of my images before I stamped this little log. So like some of the leaves and the chameleon I should have stamped down first, masked them, and then stamped this little tree branch or log down so that it looks a little more realistic for the chameleon to be standing on top of it. But that's okay. Hopefully you won't notice it in the finished product, and I'm not going to start over at this point. So again, just laying out the images here of how I want my scene to look. So I want in the beginning for it to look like the leaves and a little flower there, and then when you actually pull the mechanism, to have the chameleon kind of appear. So that's what I'm laying out here. Now it does take a little bit to get all these images stamped out, and I'm doing the masking here. Sorry about my head being in the way, but I needed to get a really good look at that, and I still didn't get him 100% on that log. So what I'll end up doing is just flipping it over because I'm not going to waste my cardstock. I'll retrace it out here again, and then try and get him to lay on there a little closer. Here I'm figuring out my masking. I must have been really tired when I did this because I didn't really think the process through clearly. Alright, so I'll start over here. I'll stamp down and I do it again. I should have stamped the chameleon first and then laid my mask down, but that's okay. It is what it is. I get it stamped a little neater here. I'm going to fussy cut out the stamped images to create my masks, and I like to use the Avery full sheet labels for my masks. I like to have the bigger sheets, and it's just a bigger bang for my buck. You can get those, I think, on Amazon, or I got mine at my local Staples store, so it's kind of handy to just have those laying around when you need them. So once I got that stamped and cut out there, I'm going to use my tonic pick tool here to try and pull up that release paper. When the item is as small as this is, it's sometimes a little hard to get that release paper to come off, but that pick tool really does help. Alright, so moving along here now, I'm going to stamp my little guy down on top there. And like I said, I should have done it the other way. I should have stamped the chameleon first, masked him, and then laid down the little branch, but that's okay. You live, you learn, right? And now what I want to do is try and have this little flower line up to where the eye of the chameleon would be. Again, I want it to kind of look like he's appearing, so the eye, I think having him when he's camouflaged would be where that flower would be. And then having this little vine kind of go across the corner there, just to kind of tie it all in together. This little vine and flower is from the Critters in the Jungle set from Lawn Fawn as well. It complements this little chameleon really well, and there's so many scenes that you can build with these stamps. I think it's really great. I do have the coordinating dies, but because I wanted a nice tight cut around the images, I didn't use them this time. I just fussy cut. Alright, continuing on to stamp out the leaves here. Again, trying to fill in as much of the area as possible so that the chameleon does look like he appears. And there'll be a lot of coloring involved, and I'll end up doing that off camera later on here. Like I said, I'm not the best Copic color in the world. I've said that many times on my videos. Someone I can recommend you to go watch is Kelly Latavola. I'm sure you guys have already heard of her. If you've in the crafting world, you know who she is. If you're new and you want to learn some Copic coloring skills, she's definitely the one I would recommend to check out. But there is many of them out there. So filling in these little leaves here. Now there's some other critters that I could have stamped, but the little square, the little reveal part, is quite tiny, and I did want to use as many of these little critters from that jungle set as I could. I just wasn't sure how it was going to work, and I decided that I would actually stamp them out and color them, and then I would put them around the frame to kind of fill in more of the jungle look of the card. So again, laying down my stamps as I try and recreate the exact same image on the left hand side that I'm doing on the right. I like to save my stamps, or my masks, and I just attach them to my packaging for my stamps there. You want to be careful though if you're using some inks that tend to stay wet longer, that when you're removing your masks, that if the ink is still wet, your fingers are going to get inky, and you want to be careful that you don't transfer that ink back onto your project. So as you can see here, everything's now all colored up, and I'm going to take that first envelope piece here, and I will use my thermo web tape to hold that die in place. And I'm going to cut that with my Gemini Junior Craft Companion. That thing is amazing. And then I'll go ahead and cut this inner slider piece. That thermo web tape is really great. I usually apply it to the back of my hand just to remove some of the stick so that it doesn't rip my project. And you're going to slide that piece on the inside, and then you're going to take these little tabs. There's some fun dangling here. And you're going to kind of just push the little tabs into the inside piece there. It's hard to explain, but hopefully you can see it here. You just kind of push them into the little pointy pieces into that inner slider mechanism. And then it's going to take a little bit to get it aligned up, and then it's going to be a little bit stiff here. And then this is where you're going to want to bring in your anti-static tool or your powder bag and really coat those quite well with that anti-static powder, and that will really help your mechanism to slide a lot smoother and easier. So it took me a little bit to get this lined up how I thought it would slide the best. It was my very first time making one of these, but I have so many ideas. I'm going to take my bone folder here, and what we want to do is apply some of this Be Creative score tape. This is one of my favorite adhesives, especially for interactive cards or any cards that have moving parts, because it is a nice strong adhesive. And I'll just use a ruler here or a straight edge to fold those tabs. And then I'm going to press it down with my bone folder. And this acts as a little track for that sliding mechanism. And then now I can take that score tape, and you're going to put it on both sides of these little tabs. And you'll want to make sure that you burnish down that score tape so that it adheres really well to that cardstock. So again, you're going to do that on the front and back side of these little flaps. And then once that's done, you can fold them over. I'm going to use my pick tool here again to help release that paper. And I only release it halfway, using my bone folder there again to burnish it down. But I release that paper only halfway because adhesive and I sometimes don't get along, and I end up sticking it to myself or places where I don't want it to get stuck down. So this just allows me to have a little more control when I'm folding over pieces or using an adhesive. So I can get everything lined up nicely. And then I can go ahead and just grab the end of that release paper and pull it down, and it's going to stick exactly where I want it to. Again, just grabbing that release paper and pulling it down, and then it's stuck perfectly. So again, when I pull over the flap here, I'll do the exact same thing. Adding my anti-static powder here. Really just be liberal with this. The more you put on, the better it slides, and you'll see here it's a little bit sticky. And this also helps with that the adhesive, that score tape, to make sure that it's not sticking to the sliding mechanism portion. And then you can see here how it's going to slide much easier. And the more you play with it, the easier it becomes to move it up and down. And I think that looks so cute. I'm hoping that it really looks like he's kind of appearing there. We went to our local zoo here not too long ago, and I was actually fascinated by the little chameleon that we have. He is just like the cutest little thing ever. I could spend all day watching him. Alright, again, just folding that over and releasing that score tape paper, and have to play with it. And making sure everything is lined up. Alright, our next step here is trying to find some cardstock that I like to go with this. I want to actually put on that frame, and I'll actually be creating my own type of frame as well. And what I have here is some pieces of cardstock that I have, or that I own, cut out. And on the back side of them I have a corresponding number. So this one is 93. And then I just go to my cardstock and I find the cardstock with the number 93, and then I know exactly which one I want. It's just an easier way to organize that. My mom did that for me. She's just incredibly talented in the organizational department. And then I can actually put all my leftover pieces back into this job ticket holder here, or this this little report cover folder, and I can store it away and use it for next time for another project. So here I have actually taken some metallic green cardstock here and the front envelope piece, and I've only cut a portion of it out. I want to create a cover for this. I want it to be green, not white. So what I did is I just, like I said, I only cut a portion of it out, and now what I want to do is remove those little tabs from the inside. First I'm going to see if I can fold over these little side bits here and try to figure out if I can wrap it around or if I need to cut them off. I wasn't sure how bulky it was going to be, and then I just decided, you know what, the easiest thing to do would just be to cut along the side of the edge here. So I'll do that off camera with my Fiskars trimmer, and then I'll lay that over top. So I cut off those two little tab pieces, and now I'm going to trim off the inside tabs here of that picture changer mechanism. There is an add-on piece that you can purchase so that you don't have to go to all this trouble, but I didn't have it, and I kind of wish I do. So I'm going to actually get it. And that'll save me from having to go through this again in the future. Now when you apply your frame, you're going to apply your adhesive just to the corners like this. If you apply it anywhere else, what's going to happen is it interferes with the sliding mechanism and your picture changer won't change, and that's not good. That's not what you want. I wasn't sure if it was going to be a big deal on this piece that I had created. If you're doing a larger frame, it's not such a big deal. I realized that after that I can add the adhesive all the way around, but at the start here I just want to make sure that I'm not going to interfere with that sliding mechanism. So then I can take this big piece here and apply the adhesive not all the way to on the outside, but on the corners again. I want to make sure that everything is still sliding. And if you don't have a roll of this Be Creative tape, it's definitely something that you want to have in your stash. You can head on over to Scrap and Stamp to take a look at that. This one I just quickly used my tape runner because I wasn't sure if I'd have to lift it off. And if I use the Be Creative tape right away here, it's not coming off. So I thought, well, just in case, I'm going to use this tape runner that if I have to remove it, I know I can without completely wrecking my project. But now that I know how to line everything up, I would prefer to use that Be Creative tape. So I kind of center it here because the edges don't quite cover. I want a little bit of that white showing on either side. And once I get that pushed down, I want to make sure everything's still moving. I have a few white pieces here that I didn't fully color, so I'm going to bring my Copics back in and just kind of clean those up, just to make sure that everything looks good when I pull it. And I see that there's a few white pieces that kind of distract from that image changing, so I'll go ahead and later on I'll use my Copics and color those in. And then here's I remove the frame, realizing that I can adhere more adhesive down onto it to it, that it's not going to interfere with that slider. And there we go, everything's moving nice and smoothly now. And I also want to cut from that same green cardstock the little pull tab. And I realize that I don't really like the look of the white, so I'll bring back my Copic marker again and kind of tie in that color. I'll give it a quick color here and see how that looks. I like how that is, so just quickly using my tape runner to adhere that little stopper tab. It's a little handy pull tab, and it also acts as a stopper so that you don't push the slider too far down. And go ahead and color in this whole thing now, and realizing that, oh yeah, I have to do the front, the back, and when I pull the slider up, I have to make sure that that's colored as well. So I start off here just coloring up the one portion, then I'm like, yep, I really need to color the whole portion or it's going to look ridiculous. So going back in, making sure I get that all colored in with the Copic. And front and back, even though I'm going to be adhering this down to an A2 size card, I want to make sure that if it does hang over the card, that it looks the same on the back. And then just clearing up those white portions of the slider that I found distracting. And then that looks a little smoother to the eye for me. So this birthday card actually is for my daughter. She's going to a birthday party for a little girl in her class, and she's having a reptile birthday party. How cool is that? That's something that I would have loved as a kid, but of course back in the day girls weren't supposed to like snakes and all of that, and I think that's just so cool that she's having all these what is it? She's having snakes, I think iguanas, tarantulas. Very cool, a very cool party. I wish I could go, but unfortunately I have other commitments, so my husband will have to take her. I just have some leftover textured brown cardstock here that I had on my desk from my other card that I made, and I thought I'd use it up. Attach that down to a standard A2 size card, and now I'm figuring out what images I want to use to frame up the picture changer mechanism, and I'm going to use my Stamp Perfect here. I know that I'll have to stamp the images a couple times to get crisp images, and I'll be using that Memento Tuxedo black ink again, as I'll color those in with the Copics. So just laying out some of the images that I want to use, and I don't think, no, on this one I don't have to do any masking, but I am stamping out multiples of these images. I wasn't sure how many I'd need, how many leaves, how many little kind of like bushes there, so I make sure that I stamp quite a few out. And like I said, I'll do the coloring off camera to save time because this is already a very long video. And once I have those stamped out, I also want to adhere this sliding portion down with some 3M foam tape. And that'll just lift it up a bit so that the pull tab portion is a little easier to grab. Oh, he's so cute. I love how that turned out. And then I start to kind of lay out my little critters and images here. I like that little parrot. I think he's so cute, and he adds a little bit of a pop of color to the card, as everything else is pretty neutral green and brown, some earthy tones, and it's just got a nice pop of color to him. Using my reversible tweezers here. I like using these when there's small images that I have to adhere down, especially with liquid adhesive. I tend to glue my fingers more than I glue anything else in my projects. Had a little bit of trouble there with my Gina K Connect glue there. It wasn't coming out nicely, so I had to use a pin and poke a bit of a hole in the top there to release some of the dried adhesive glue. And then once I'm going to speed this up because it took me a while to play around with it. And I get them all laid out here. And then I have my finished card. So give you a look at how this whole thing looks. We've got some shimmer cardstock. My little snake there has got some Wink of Stella on him just to give him a little bit of sparkle interest. And there you can see the little chameleon appear. I think he looks so cute, and I hope that the recipient enjoys him and goes along with the theme. We do have to do one last thing here, and that is the inside sentiment, and I'm going to use the Your One in a Chameleon that came with that little One in a Chameleon stamp set there from Lawn Fawn. And I'll use my ruler here to try and get it as straight as possible. And I've discovered that if I leave my ruler in place and then put the lid down, it'll stick straight. I don't have to I was trying to remove the ruler before and stamp it. Yeah, it was just a mess. I was struggling with how sticky the sentiments can be. I'm using that Versaclear black, is it Nocturne ink? This is my new favorite sentiment ink. Beautiful crisp clear images on the first go. And then there you go. You can see how this card came together. I love it so much. Here's a closer look at the finished image. Again, I'm liking the shimmer cardstock, the little sparkle on the snake. I hope you enjoyed today's card and that's inspired you to make your own picture changer card. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I know it was really long. Head over to the Scrap and Stamp blog to check out all the materials and sales and new items that they have. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll catch you next time.